A brief synopsis of Christian 21's information and revelations for the Great Spiritual Awakening following Allison Buzz Lightyear, aka AC-21, Further into the Rabbit Hole Part 3 by Leon George. Sinclair continued from Part 2. However old you are, your favorite children's TV presenter from when you were a child. They killed children. As one example that springs to mind, let's take David Attenborough. It's almost impossible to imagine someone like David Attenborough or Sir David Attenborough flaying and killing children alive after he's raped them, boys and girls of all ages, with broken bottles and electricity. It's well far out, yet shockingly true. He was a Sir, and to become knighted you must first become a 33rd degree Freemason, and to become a 33rd degree Freemason, you must kill a human child on camera. Before camera and video, it was witnessed by other 33rd degree Freemasons in judicial or respected positions, people who the public would trust without question. This is the glue of Freemasonry: documented atrocities committed against children and held over the person committing the act as ransom for their entire life. It was committed on a regular basis by society's most loved and trusted royalty, politicians, celebrity chefs, dancers, actors, musicians, newsreaders, police chiefs, education ministers. It literally involved everyone. People need to understand the shape of the earth first. When you can get there in your mind and you know its true shape, the rest should be a lot easier to understand. There's no point progressing to the possibility of a soul family until you have worked out the shape of the earth. Just get on TikTok or YouTube and look, or just think about it yourself, it's not hard. The shape of the earth is the first stepping stone to any wisdom on the situation of the Great Awakening as a whole. I thought the earth was a globe at one point, the same as anyone else who knows the partial truth. Everyone who thinks the earth is flat was once a globe monkey themselves. The only difference is that flat earthers bothered to look for themselves to prove the flat earth were wrong. But you can't use Nicholas Copernicus, the child-killing Freemason, as a frame of reference or NASA or any such agency, but by using obvious observation. This is all so easy when you have the missing jigsaw pieces. Those pieces are given for free by Christian21 on rumble.com Siblibly22 Telegram, TME Love and Light 16. You see, there are stages to this great awakening process. The further we go into it all past the first scare events, the more traumatic it will get, from peak fear to peak fear. They will guide the emotion of the masses from the TV, as usual, lol. As I said previously, the devout religious, the elderly, and those with current breathing issues or lung complaints that cause shortness of breath will be the first to go. Then the suicide crew and the lightweights, our trollers for instance. These groups will all perish first. But that's at the beginning of it all still. Don't forget that we haven't even had the sky event at this point yet. So we lose a load more people in that through fear, shock, terror, and more suicides. But then we have the fact that the GAA once again, the Galactic Ancestral Alliance, will take away the fake 1 Leon Rabbit Hole 3.txp Leon Rabbit Hole 3/8/26 3:35 p.m. page 1. Dome. The story of Chicken Little and the day the sky fell is referencing this event from the past resets in plain sight, to cement in the subconscious truth and reality many, many years ago, even though no one would ever have worked that out. The story was part of the oral folk tradition and only began to appear in print after the Brothers Grimm had set a European example with their collection of German tales in the early years of the 19th century. One of the earliest to collect tales from Scandinavian sources was just Matthias Thiele, who in 1823 published an early version of the Henny Penny story in the Danish language. Wikipedia, interestingly, Brothers Grimm were indeed grim, as fuck, Satanists who wrote Hansel and Gretel, amongst many other stories. These tales were riddled with in plain sight of the day. Some say that the story of Chicken Little could be up to 2,000 years old in its oral format. But when the sky does indeed fall, as they remove the projection dome, which sits inside our firmament between our line of sight with the actual firmament itself, immediately behind it, like two colanders, or sieves sitting on top of each other on the table. The inner one will be switched off, making it look like pixelation from the star Polaris, all the way down past your shoulders and past your knees. Melting pixelation like you have never seen in your entire life. People who think the Earth is a sphere at this point will have no conceivable pigeonhole to allocate this display of madness. Because until you know the truth, and we are not out in the depths of space on a rotating ball, but we are on a large flat plane with a firmament above us, and you understand the reason for a projection dome in the first place, and the fact that they plan to remove it, well, look, the truth sets you free, so they say. I won't be worrying. I'll enjoy it for the liberation finale that it is. But the rest of the world? They are fucke. This is why we do what we do, because when shit like this starts transpiring, people will shit themselves, but they need not shit themselves. If they understood what was going on, they could relax. But those pesky three strings of religion, finance, and perceived knowledge will fuck them up and prevent them looking into Christian 21's information and revelations. But we do what we do, regardless. We signed up for exactly this, and it's the end of a long shift. I've been tapping out since the last ice age. I didn't even want to come. Thylon made me, said I would get a laptop and be able to drink soda in that in the last loop. Said that I'd have ponies as a child and be making daisy chains throughout my idyllic childhood. Said that I'd be able to see Romanian prostitutes and that when I'm all grown up, and my twin flame wouldn't mind because she would probably be working in a brothel herself by the last loop anyway. I couldn't resist it. I was brainwashed, lured by soda and human minge. It wouldn't be the first time, lol. Only thing he didn't tell me was how long it would take. Oh, it'll be sweet, Lee. It will feel like no time at all after we're back. In and out, bruv, in it. We had over 600 lives, though. Most have ended in premature death. Killed untold times, executed untold times, several burnings at the stake and in fields, beheadings and murdered, all the fucking time. Good job, they wiped my memory each loop. Stuck here, I'm grateful for that, fuck's sake. Don't want to remember all that, do you, loop after loop? All we did was push back, not under order or advice, but because it was the right thing to do. This is why the 4,000 didn't really have much choice about coming in here. I guess we wanted to. I was only joking above, but only an old soul can't be bought, wouldn't ever sell its soul, will always naturally do the right thing even at personal cost. That's why these souls are here, as well as their soul codex, or unique harmonic architecture, which was needed to be here to keep codes on the planets for balancing and later on, realm restabilization as the parasitic overlays and frequency fields purged our positive systems of functionality. This last loop in particular, all of the 4,000 have been positioned and pre-programmed to find these nodes unawarely in their lifetimes. Merely being in proximity to a church or cathedral or ancient site in your lifetime has been for a reason other than enjoyment or a school trip, holiday, etc. You were meant to go there because when you went there, your codex passed information into the lattice membrane network at that node. Our struggles were always with the authorities in every epoch, whether they were gods, kings, clergy, tax collectors, or Catholics. We were previously against the church in its many formats, crusades, etc. We weren't spreading awakening information back then. We were unawarely involved in it all as we are now, or were the 4,000, I mean, and some of the 200 million, but not all. It's not a coincidence that there were 4,000 ancient souls come in here all that time ago, and now there are approaching 4,000 Telegram users on the channel. Lol. You see, most of the 200 million starseeds didn't wake up. Most of them had a jab or 3+ most likely. They will be mostly where they were needed, i.e. Europe, US, UK, Europe. Christian was placed on the doorstep of Draco power. London, Portsmouth, UK and English is the widest spoken and understood language on this planet, so it made sense to have him here. But without the 4,000 ancient souls who would never sell out and who will always naturally push back, don't forget that population numbers were way, way, way smaller in those days, so 4,000 made a bigger impact back then without social media. All those lives, persecuted mostly, killed as an occupational hazard often. At least I got to try Romanian brass and Dr. Strawberry soda, so I can only conclude that in lieu of any memories, I'm confident it must have been worth it. But as I was saying, I well digressed. I have to, though, as it's such a big and very new subject. To explain an aspect to newcomers is a lot harder than one might assume, as you need to lay the groundwork to answer some questions, as often people do not know the info is that new. To recap now, for the resonating army, it's always a good idea to hear some of it again in a different way with different explanations. There is no fire back home, no naked flames, other than you and the missus enjoying postcoital time in bed, lol, because fire is dangerous. It can burn shit and hurt people. There is nothing dangerous back home whatsoever. Nothing, no surprises, and no accidents. All energy is powerful and harmless, as it once was here many years ago. It's only since the Industrial Revolution, which was in fact the fall of Great Tartary and not the beginning of a new epoch in man's story, but the abrupt and devastating end of a more advanced civilization. The energy systems were inverted, big pharma was set up, the education system was set up, large-scale manufacturing was set up. When I was at school, primary school, not big school, and we touched on history over the years, the Oliver Twist era of time, with workhouses and child labor, up north in England, where Craig from the Dale Emmy live. It was a thriving center for manufacturing, cotton weaving and textile manufacturing was rife. It was highly elaborate, resplendent in its overall appeal, with tightly woven fabrics, bright and vivid colors, complex patterns, delicate care and attention to detail. The complexity of the machinery used to weave and create these masterpieces of artwork tapestry were as beautiful as the textiles they produced. It was beyond next level, and you see images and pictures of only children in workhouses operating this complex textile weaving looms and machinery. I used to think, we came from the Dark Ages to industrialized night, but grown-ups were meant for very exact 5 mm with mechanical processes and procedure immediately following the Dark Ages? Really? They were called the Dark Ages because it was Tartaria, a civilization of excellence that was ended by the concept of the rise and fall of civilizations. Civilizations do not rise and fall, they rise and ascend. Resets are the fall of civilizations, nothing else, and everything else is a lie to explain this fact away without the population noticing before the next reset. And it always worked for the parasites this way. Only ever did a couple of thousand people listen and actually make it out before the culling. No one believed us back then either, for whatever reason. There were obviously a lot less people and a lot less NPCs back then in those resets past, but they did use NPCs in those distant times also. They just needed far fewer of them to get the job done. What is the job of an NPC or non-player character? Typically, an NPC is hardwired into the mainstream narrative, directly through mainstream news, or indirectly through more subtle outlets such as women's chat show discussions, tea and coffee morning chats in town, workplaces, or wherever. Men, women, and children are NPCs, and they make up 97% of the population. An NPC will only have mainstream interests, usually, although there are exceptions and many subcategories of NPCs. There is an NPC for every situation because 97% of the population are NPCs. So we have fly fishing NPCs, deep sea fishing NPCs, motor racing NPCs, sport NPCs, awake NPCs. Every conceivable NPC is here with you, trust me. And these people are unwittingly there to derail your prospects all through life, especially for now. Their thought processes are always aligned with the consensus reality of their particular herd's interests and ideologies at that time, aspirations or lack of them, as the case may be, for the uninterested NPC. The Cabal had it easy. They are so self-consumed with the past and anxious about the future because they are so uninterested in their own life, or the life of anyone else. They're reacting to life instead of owning it, being pushed around by authority and obeying it, jaded only by what they can't see, focused on what the Cabal deep state parasites wanted them to be focusing on, i.e. anything mainstream. And there is a lot of options. Like with the pyramids, the option allowed on the table of education is and has always been that it is an unsolved mystery because the truth has been kept off the table of education for that exact reason. So these tomato-throwing naysayers really haven't got an argument. Their lazy approach and quick-to-criticize line of defense, lame at debate, is pathetic. Their argument worked 10 years ago, but it seems that the world of the awake moved on considerably since COVID, turbocharged with Christian 21's intel. The truth of reality for free. I mean, what more could you possibly ask for? Look at an expert in history. What do they actually know about true history? Nothing. It was all lies to cover the previous Tartarian civilization. There is no truth to history, no truth to space. They were just two institutions that lied through their teeth and were tightly controlled from the top down by 33rd degree Freemasons. All the top names from the last reset, all the 33rd degree Freemasons who had deceived well in the last reset, were given new jobs this reset, such as running the Smithsonian, seriously lucrative railroad contracts, steam contracts, and construction contracts. The Carnegies, Wikipedia. Andrew Carnegie, 1835 to 1999, was a Scottish-American industrialist who became one of the richest people in history by leading the massive expansion of the American steel industry in the late 19th century. He is famous for his rags to riches story, his pioneering use of vertical integration to dominate business, and for giving away 90% of his fortune to promote education, libraries, and world peace. Key reasons for Carnegie's fame. Steel industry tycoon. Carnegie built the Carnegie Steel Company, which revolutionized steel production using the Bessemer process and became the foundation of the American industrial economy. Rags to riches story. Born into poverty in Scotland, he immigrated to the U.S. and began working at age 13, rising from a bobbin boy to a telegraph messenger, to a railroad manager, and finally to a steel magnate. Philanthropy and the gospel of wealth. In 1901, he sold his company for nearly $500 million, the richest man in the world at the time, and dedicated his life to philanthropy. He argued in his 1889 essay, The Gospel of Wealth, that the wealthy have a moral obligation to act as trustees of their money for the public good. Library legacy. He funded over 2,500 public libraries worldwide, believing strongly in access to knowledge and self-improvement. Foundations and institutions. He established lasting institutions, including the Carnegie Corporation of New York, Carnegie Mellon University, and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So basically, he's another Bill Gates, or Elon Musk of his day, just a philanthropist doing good who came from rags to riches, as you do. His library interest was to spread the new bullshit far and wide, making it like when PCs and computers first came out, prestigious to own one. It was the same as going to a posh library back then. The vaulted Tartarian ceilings and low-light lighting of the green banker's lamps, with the polished brass bases on the desks in the library areas. Think Indiana Jones University Library Hall. It was this prestige that made reading and books and knowledge, albeit fake knowledge, desired and something that wealthy people did. Like wealthy people had the first expensive laptops and computers, then poor people had the chance. It was the same with books. They wanted to feed you hyper bullshit for the last reset, and they wanted to sell you loads of shit through Chinese websites like Temu, Alibaba, and Wish so they could plow money into their demonic campaigns. As the truth train pulled into Cybertown, people started to wake up. They woke up to Satanism. At least we got that far already, and many other things. But to the masses, these are still disjointed conspiracy theories. They haven't seen the simplicity in Christian 21's information and revelations for the great spiritual awakening of mankind yet. They will, but as yet they have not. History is full of these people who sprang up out of nowhere. I would not be surprised if the Carnegies were Rockefellers or Rothschilds even. That's one for Christian. People trying to dismantle Christian's info using allowed and accepted history and its historical narrators through all of recorded history. You need to remember that history is recorded by the victors, and the victors were always the parasites as a whole. It was the Freemasons for the last reset, evidenced by the many hundreds of photographs of post-reset carnage and pre-repopulation photographs of the flattened land, crushed buildings, all showing a well-dressed man or three, with the hidden hand in the jacket lapel, showing the symbolic requirement to display their allegiance to the creed in plain sight. Before the Freemasons, it was Druids. Before the Druids, it would have been another sect or clandestine society obscured by secrecy and symbolism. In Greece, it was the oracle at Delphi and the sages of Greek mythology. There was magic and occultism everywhere you went through those distant eras in time, which were all to lay the ground for their prized final eighth reset, which you narrowly escaped by the skin of your teeth. It would have been all over by the time 2019 to 2020 came. The world would indeed have had only 500 million people in it, as the Georgia Guidestones explained in 8 different languages, now destroyed by white hat military as a clear sign of their intervention, way back in 2022. Those 500 million people would be on a repetitive loop cycle of birth, rape, sacrifice, birth, rape, sacrifice, birth, torture, rape, sacrifice. Some people would work as slaves in factories, but it was the end of the Terran soul's future for eternity, and any other ET unfortunate enough to be trapped in here. And then, the entire gateway would have fallen very quickly. All 178 worlds would have fallen, the benevolent defeated and morally weak, seeing the jewel in the crown be taken in its entirety. Then world after world would have surrendered and capitulated, or been destroyed by the many more new parasitic species that would now feel safe to join the slaughterhouse of Gateway 10. If this had have been allowed to happen, it would mean that source creation had failed, and evil and sacrifice would have won the war for physical existence. The entire system would need to be crashed, destroyed, and restarted from scratch, billions of years wasted. So that's why it seems like it's taking a long time. It's the very end of a very long process that started long before the parasites took control. 178,000 years ago. When you understand that the highest forms of intelligence were around for billions and billions of years before physical life, and the fact that the reason that physical life was even invented was because the light beings who are incarnated here now as well, and have been here for the whole 178,000 years, had experienced everything that there was to experience. They had invented, traversed, and done everything that you could possibly do without a physical body and a physical plane of existence. In the highest light realms, which came before the lower light realms, there is no physical plane of existence to mince about in. And I must admit, I'm not sure how this was achieved before at least the creation of the cube itself, cloistering off the dark matter field. But thinking about it, I was with Christian last week in the cafe in Portsmouth eating egg on toast to sausages, and he told me how. Space isn't dark, Leon. It's just, well, very, very spacious, and it's bright and white, not black. Some partially chewed sausage fell out of my open mouth as I coughed some egg back onto the plate at hearing this. It all became a lot clearer. From darkness to light is an all-encompassing term used in the Great Awakening. It means in every way possible darkness to light. I already understood the custodian tech black void plasma being used to create our black nighttime sky, but I didn't realize space, or at least the dark matter field, was bright white light. This leads one to formulate how life was created before the creation of the cube. If space, or the dark matter field, is not black, and not even dark, then possibly, in my mind anyway, light beings can exist in it without the protection of a cube. Maybe by sectioning off an area of existence with a forerunner to a cube? I need more clarification on this, but it adds to the understanding of what to expect towards the end of the sky event. I mentioned above about the removal of the projection dome, but knowing that space is black, what will the sleepers do when the projection dome is removed, and what's behind it turns out to be white, and not black? It will look like someone ripped open the sky like a tin of sardines. People will be mindless with panic. All people not in FEMA camps, i.e. concentration camps, which is what a FEMA camp is, basically just like WW2 days. Everyone else would have been in 15-minute cities with social credit scores, and descent would have led to a one-way trip to the closest FEMA camp for torture and organ harvesting. And you would have wanted it, demanded and begged for it, because of the irresistible lure of Nasara Jisara and the forgiveness of all debt, humanitarian projects to start or be involved in, and medbeds to heal the sick and reduce the age of the population, cleaning the ocean, feeding Africa. Red Mercury videos are seen doing the rounds on TikTok and social media, Red mercury is a fascinating metal. Mercury comes from cinnabar ore, which is a red rock long favored for its red pigment qualities for the color of vermilion. Cinnabar ore is heated to 500 degrees Celsius in the presence of oxygen. The result collects in pans below the furnace and is a liquid metal known as mercury. Obviously, mercury is silver in color, yet the ore it comes from, cinnabar, is red. Yet there is red mercury, which is clearly a lot more complex than mere mercury itself. Red mercury has no reflection and is repelled by a garlic clove, oddly, whereas in the presence of gold, red mercury will be drawn towards the gold. I asked Christian about this last year, he said. Yeah, that's what they use to mine gold with Lee. They sit above the land in a craft over the gold seam and fire a beam down, parting the soil to the gold layer, then send a targeted beam of red mercury into the hole, held stable in an energy field so it don't go all over the place, and hit the gold seam itself with a liquidation frequency. And the red mercury pulls every single bit of gold into the directed energy transfer beam of the craft. That's what them holes are in the mountains that are all laid out in a uniform. Really in the mountains somewhere in South America, I think. You see, one paragraph sews up a 40-year conundrum that have had experts scratching their heads and sending out research teams to investigate at great cost, and Christian answers it immediately without faltering with a perfect answer. Vape and vape juice and why the elites pushed vaping so hard. It was because they knew that people were waking up for the last 30 years on the dangers of cigarettes and quitting. They needed a new entry point to get toxins and nanomaterials back into the body, especially in younger generations, before their pineal gland fully matured. By branding vapes as cool and harmless, they bypassed the stigma around smoking. Even nicotine-free vapes contain these heavy metals, nickel, lead, chromium. These materials lodge in the brain and block electrical signals between neurons, slowing decision-making processes and causing brain fog. Propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin are carriers for chemical flavorings that coat the lungs, reducing oxygen capacity and lowering prana intake. Nanoparticles in polymers are able to carry micro-AAI programs into the bloodstream, bypassing digestion. That's what they were designed to do. Artificial flavor molecules are structurally similar to endocrine disruptors, targeting the pineal gland and hypothalamus indirectly, with a direct attack on the pineal and chakras by metals and nanocompounds that calcify it faster, cutting off dream clarity, intuition, and interdimensional signal reception. Nicotine and other certain flavoring chemicals damage the chakra solar plexus heart bridge and keep the immune system in a state of mild stress, lowering vibration and making higher heart activation a lot harder. Also, the throat chakra is trained by the repetition of constant inhalation to accept a foreign intake ritual. This makes the etheric body more open to subconscious programming. The reason teenagers were targeted is because pineal glands are most open before their mid-20s, and disrupting their pineal glands early blunts spiritual potential, and also because younger minds adapt faster to AI behavioral nudges, making them long-term carriers of NPC-like programs. To detox from this shit. Metal detox, cilantro, chlorella spirulina, zeolite pineal flush, raw cacao, blue lotus tea, sight through closed eyes, sound baths in 32 Hz heart field activation, gratitude practices, physical connection with nature to repair chakra frequency, all this nice pushing back, it's so meek and humble. It's needed and necessary, very, very necessary, but true souls are so kind, nice, and accommodating. They mean no harm. They do not want to be rude, obnoxious, uncaring, or intimidating. They shy away from this area of interaction at all costs, yet society itself, and the societal mechanics of personal interaction, dictate a different rendering of experienced interaction, a forced and often mechanical or analog process, because of the uncertainty and possible denial refusal of that being sought after, whatever it may be, a dental appointment or a new car. China is one of the countries that is populated mostly by NPCs. China is not old, it's brand new. Chinese people were not here prior to the previous reset, the reset before Tartaria. The China we know of from the past reset was known of as East Tartary. The rest of the world was known of as West Tartary. The latest Chinese look only happened the reset just passed. New Chinese were created as an NPC workforce for the industry of the future, 1970s onwards. Pretty obvious, really. Everything is made and redesigned in China. They are the brains behind manufacturing and technology for the entire planet, years ahead of the West in terms of progression in its satanic format. Their NPC firmware is geared towards conformity, success, education, obedience. Chinese children excel in pretty much everything they do. It's their mindset, programming, and culture. But East Tartary was nothing like the ridge China we see today. I think I said the other day I saw a vid on TikTok, a Chinese woman from a university, on interview. She said, think about it. In 1950, China had 500 million people. We also had a single-child policy. But today we have 1.405 billion people. That means that 250 million Chinese women would needed to have been having 5 children each, every woman from 1950 to 2025. But they didn't because China had a one-child policy for 60 years. Where did all the people come from? Good question. She should start following Christian 21, lol lol. No meat in any supermarket aisle in the last 30 years has ever shit in a field. It's never walked because it didn't have legs. It wasn't inhumanely killed because it was never alive to start with. It was grown as a large joint of meat in a liquid vat, with many more like it that are cut into segments after it's fully grown. Similarly, no egg in a supermarket has ever been near a chicken. 90% of supermarket food is completely fake. The meat as you walk down the meat aisle both sides is all grown meat. It's grown in liquid. It's never fur and legs. It's never eaten grass or seen daylight. It's the processed meats that have the human remains in them, all that ham, mixed reconstituted meats, salamis and shit like that, burgers, mincemeat. If it's from a multinational food company, 1,000,000% it's got people in it, even the vegetarian vegan lines. It was all people. It's not now, but it was made from dead people, or had some dead people in it. It's part of the revelations of the apocalypse. Actual meaning, the revealing of that which was previously obscured. McDonald's sells 6.5 million per day, just reg Big Macs and shit. And that's just McDonald's, Nateste, Burger King, Wendy's, burger joints in town, etc. That's just hamburgers. Plus all the joints of meat in supermarkets, steaks, legs, shoulder ribs. Now they can 3D print realistic looking meat, but they don't need to, as they've been growing it as the 1960s. Children who have nightmares about monsters are actually experiencing bleed-through memories of past lives where they have been killed by the hand of Paris themselves, monsters in true reality. The children are not fantasizing. It's past life recall because all dreams are based in reality and physical experience. The mind always needs something to go off, to create the mental imagery of the slumbering vision. It's not all gleaned from cartoons and kids' shows. These memories are so traumatic that they are sometimes spared the amnesia vortex's reformat completely. But children and monsters is a real thing. The monsters may not be under the bed in this loop, but they are in the closet of the mind. And that's where the nightmares stem from, so go easy on your kids when they wake up in terror, because they have just relived a sacrifice. And this is one of the reasons that scare events are essential. It's a good time to explain this again. The GAA, Galactic Ancestral Alliance, need the population, all except Christian 21 followers, to be in severe and extreme trauma and catatonic in shock. This is because that memory needs to be hardwired into their soul architecture so that this never happens again. If it will not anyway because the parasites have all been removed from all simulations and because they are going to make sure you all shit yourselves in a big way so that in the future, no one ever thinks that they can better on their own or wants to sell their soul in case the situation was to happen again, which it won't. But belts and braces, as they say, because that's when negativity sets in and it's a slippery slope. You will have never in this lifetime experienced terror like what is coming. That's a fact. But instead of listening, they laughed. They will see our utter exasperation at 4 years of banging our heads on the wall trying to help people who, for some strange reason, don't seem to want to be out of debt, own their home with no more mortgage repayments, get cured of cancer unless it's via orthodox measures, don't want to know about the good ET, and don't see why it all matters. The awake community, top truthers, and so-called experts haven't a fucking clue what is going on in the world since this first started. It's quite bizarre because I, too, once followed those idiots. I didn't realize until Christian 21 came along in September 2022, I had just found out that Trump was a Satanist who killed kids. I was fucked. All my bets were on him, but I saw lots of proof that he was a Freemason. This was back then. We all know this now, but I followed the truthers. It made sense too, 'cause they seemed like the only people in the know. But all the missing pieces fell into place when I met Christian. I saw straight through the veil. You can't see straight through the veil without Christian 21's information. I assure you it's not possible without understanding the only truth that there is, Christian 21's information and revelations. No one will or could understand what is happening without Christian 21's intel. This is certainly a multi-layered movie, because we now know the man playing the person who the world assumes to be Donald J. Trump is George Patton, Jr., son of WW2 General George Patton. But even they were Satanists, so there's been a bit more replacing going on than we previously thought. Ask yourself what you actually know. What is the sum total of your knowledge base from the years of observation education? What you know? Write it down and look again with fresh eyes. Fourth density technology, such as the parasites utilized, was supernatural to humans in third density. So imagine what 12th density technology is like, compared to fourth density tech. We assume so much. We assume that progress starts at the beginning, that invention is the fruit of necessity, that the wheel was a pivotal invention that led mankind to conquer foreign lands and build civilizations. The crude wheel laid the way for the mechanized cog, and the mechanized cog is the cornerstone of industry itself, isn't it? It must be. How else would we have been able to mechanize industry and do things such as create machines to assemble vehicles on production lines if we didn't have a wheel that evolved over time into a cog? We had buttons on trousers that evolved into the zipper, which in turn evolved into Velcro fastenings with the advent and ingenuity of new process of manufacture with plastics and chemistry, as opposed to tools in a workshop. We used to kill people with stones, then we invented the bow and arrow, then the cannon, then the rifle, then the rocket, then vaccines in a syringe. But the path of invention is clear and easy to understand. A stone axe came before the bronze axe, and the bronze axe came before the iron axe, and so on. But this is not how it is everywhere else. It's only your planet here, since the occupation started all those years ago, that invention has been realized in this way. As an example, Kalo said to Christian many years ago that they couldn't work out what the parasites had the humans doing till they finished it. A wheel, they had never seen a wheel before. No ET has ever used a wheelbarrow, a cart, a car, a chariot. Wheels are like a pointless waste of time. Yet the parasites made you rely on them for everything. Buttons are another one. Shirt buttons, how bizarre and large conveyances to carry many people at the same time, rolling about on roads. What the fuck? A building where you send your own children away so that someone else can teach them stuff? Are you shitting me? Another building around the corner, or in another town, where all your money is held by someone else. Synthetic and obviously toxic petrochemical medication when you are ill. Seriously? People are so reliant on the government to tell them stuff that common sense is to be ridiculed. TV programs certain people through the types of shows that they watch, to conform in certain ways, and to have similar opinions as their TV characters. Think of how many Homer Simpson men do you know who actually aspire to be this stereotype. Other shows like Friends, where people all decided that they too liked pizza all of a sudden, the pop singers with their trendy attire, or the bow-tied solicitor types who gravitate toward more intellectual programs, or better still, the radio being the thinking man's television. The lattice membranes are commonly referred to as ley lines, and they link the nodal points all over the planet together. They are the reason that every single ancient site was built where it was, including ale churches, cathedrals, Taj Mahal, Angkor Thom, Angkor Wat, London Square Mile, Hagia Sophia, Great Pyramids, etc., etc., because these edifices all sit directly on top of a major or minor node. We also explained how previously this realm was ninth density, and how the parasites are fourth density. So you can't go from a fourth density simulation to a ninth density simulation and expect everything to be okay. It would have killed them. They could penetrate our membrane, firmament, in crafts, but they couldn't get out of the craft and walk about because the ambient frequency is way too high. But because they had a souled soul with them as their new transport vessel, it allowed inter-realm travel via the harmonic architecture of the human soul who sold its presence. The actual souled soul was still somewhere in the souled vessel. So look at it this way. A souled soul acted like a key to get into Realm 3. The nodal points situated on top of these highly energetic locations are crowned with a crystalline temple, and inside that temple was an interface where the church altar is now situated. The interface would be a protrusion of crystal emanating from the floor up to about the size of a man or woman, and that is where the most powerful energy in the temple is. Large-scale manifestation is done in these locations, so they cap that off with a stone altar to dampen the positive frequencies. But before I digress, Christian explained how even villages are put there for a good reason. There is no random settlement springing up in prehistory. It just looked like that was what was happening. The parasites put villages and settlements where there were nodes, knowing full well that these areas would explode with people in the future years, because that's what they had planned to happen. With the density of the area suppressed, in time the humans would carry on expanding and suppressing the energy as they built up their civilization before the next harvest, and they would do this themselves. Let me just recap density suppression here so there's no ambiguity. From a previous synopsis, density suppression is like having a dial, for explanation's sake, a dial that you can rotate left and right, to lower and raise the density of the arena in question. I'll explain how it is done after, but first I need to explain how to understand it, so we will keep it simple for now. Imagine a large, dark warehouse. In the middle of the dark warehouse is a table, but you do not know this yet. In the middle of the table is a statue, and hanging several meters directly above the statue is a bright, dimmable light. But the light is off when you enter the room, and on its lowest setting. You are standing 20 meters away from the table with the statue on top of it. Someone else has the dimmer dial, and they turn it one click to the right. The light comes on high in the ceiling. You can't even see the table, let alone what's on it. This would be first density. There is no first density, but for the sake of this analogy, let's roll with this concept for now. The dial is turned up a notch, second density, still too dark. You still can't even see a table. Up a notch again. This is third density, and now you can actually see a silhouette of something in the middle of the room. You can just make out a flat surface if you squint, but you can't tell if the flat surface is a table or not. Now, turn the dial up fully to the highest setting, the 15th setting or density. Now you can see clearly that there is a statue sitting on a table. The light is so bright that you can see every detail in the warehouse as well. You can even see the spider's webs high up in the rafters. You notice that the statue is a beautiful work of Tartarian art, sculpted in white marble, exquisite in design and execution. But when you gradually turn the dial back down to the left, towards its lowest setting, the room and the statue start to fade away from sight again. Then, just as you get to the point where the statue is no longer visible, but you can still see the actual tabletop, you stop it there in third density. When the density is suppressed from ninth to third, the highly vibrating nature of the higher density's crystalline temple, or building, would fade away as the density was lowered. It would still be there, but the person in the lower density would not be able to see it. Whereas a person in the higher density of ninth would still be able to see it. It's still there, just vibrating way too high for third density perception, just like the statue in the warehouse analogy from above. Once the density was lowered to third, the parasites then instructed the souled souls and Freemasons to create a floor plan, walls, ceiling heights, roof pitch, etc., to match the original structure's dimensions. This new stonework is placed exactly on the footings of the crystalline temple's floor plan. And it is placed there so that the negative stone blockwork, although beautiful to us now, will cover up any possible positivity or revelation of what is actually still there. Because if there wasn't now a third density located there, if the parasites who instruct the Freemasons and sold souls to replicate that particular church on top of this particular node, and say that former crystalline temple's GPS coordinates were in a cornfield here in third density, and a man was walking his dog through that field, and say he was in a good mood with a very high vibration, he may see an anomaly, some bleed-through harmonic scaffolding. They lowered the density by covering the nodal points in concrete, as explained several times in prior synopses, masonry, ice, etc. But the fascinating bit here is that the ley lines themselves are dampened and harvested simultaneously, as Christian explained. The Baphomet power pylons do not just deliver energy to substations for redistribution. Some of these pylons, a vast amount of them, also harvest the ley line energy as they pass their reach around the countryside. Roads and train tracks connect towns and cities together for transport and distribution, logistics, and progress. Nodes are where towns and cities are placed, as discussed, and the nodes are interconnected by ley lines. The nodes and the ley lines are where the natural planetary power is emanating from and traveling between. The roads and railroads are all following the crystalline lattice membrane networks to the next closest node town city, and the Baphomet pylons are harvesting the backed-up energy from the same lattice membrane network of ley lines that is being pushed out in cities, as they ever expand outwards like a blob of ink on blotting paper. This backed-up energy is only harvestable from the perimeters of the town city, outwards along the lattice membrane network roads, ley lines, railroads, because loosh is generated within the confines of the masses of humans in proximity generating it. So the boundaries of the town or city itself will see loosh production peter out when there is reduced or lowered negativity, in the same way that you lose a phone signal when leaving a built-up area with many cell phone masts. You find you have less reception out in the sticks, leaving the positive energy more easily discernible and easily harvestable from the countryside between and around the backed-up node town city and the ley lines themselves. Now this is where it gets proper interesting. Christian explained that the nodes and ley lines emit huge amounts of highly positive electromagnetic energy. They emit not just electromagnetic energy, but because of the composition of the materials in the ground, and also their location and amounts there, gold, silver, gemstones, crystals, etc., all these things are meant to stay in the ground. They are a highly advanced spiritual technology, developed and perfected over billions of years. That's why they are there in the first place, and their positioning along the lattice membrane networks is what causes the frequencies in that node, and the actual ley line itself, to be unique in a similar way to fount water. Certain springs and natural founts have very specific water. In Spain, for instance, in Tartarian times, Moorish kings would ride from North Africa to the Spanish Alpujarra, a region in southern Spain, to a specific iron-rich fuente, fount. Only in this fount could such high ratios of iron be found, and they would travel weeks on horseback specifically for this reason, to get this prized water. It's the same with healing temples because of the composition of the materials that the temple is grown from, a crystalline amalgamation of many attributes, and the minerals and metals in the ground, and the ley line composition between these nodes. The temples all had very specific individual and unique properties attributed to their functions. These crystalline temples were never places of worship. They were places of healing and manifestation. They are essential for the homeostasis of every realm and its inhabitants. The bit I am getting to is with Christian's detailed explanation of crystalline lattice membrane networks and the electromagnetic nature of the energy that they naturally emit along their path to the next node. And you will see this if you watch the video I posted on Christian's Rumble page the other day, Aid the Mystery of Tartaria's Self-Powering Locomotives, HTTP URL. These powerful machines were driven by coal or wood that heated the furnace, to boil the water, to make the steam, to power the pistons, to drive the locomotive forward on the tracks. These machines were the herald of the Industrial Revolution itself, but they were not designed, invented, or created at the outset of the Industrial Revolution. They were, in fact, the legacy technology that was bequeathed to us from the past, downgraded by Freemasons. Because the Industrial Revolution was merely the fall of Great Tartary and was not the great beginnings of anything. For instance, the London Underground was designed and created to run on pneumatic air pressure. We discussed this 3+ years ago in Christian's Flat. The Underground was highly efficient travel, much faster than today's speeds, and with no dangerous electricity. It was clean, safe, reliable travel, all over the major city of London. It would have been the same story everywhere there is an underground rail link. They were all Tartarian concepts. There was a photograph in a railway museum from 1867 showing a steam locomotive loaded up with 6 full carriages of people and property. But one sharp-eyed enthusiast noted that in the description, the train was traveling 305 miles, but there was no coal tender attached to the engine. Thinking it to be a mistake, he asked the curator of the museum about this image, and the curator replied, "Well, yes, it's very strange. We have another 43 photos, just like this, from before 1880. You see, a steam train relies on coal or wood and water. It's going nowhere without it. And it needs enough for the distance between its starting point and destination, or a place to top up with more coal and water on the route. Otherwise, a locomotive is merely a very expensive object that you can't move." So to have 44 pictures of trains with no coal tender and descriptions of their long journeys that they were just about to embark on below the photograph, it was obvious that something wasn't quite right. To cut a long story short, in 1875, Thomas Russell Crampton wrote a paper called Observations on Anomalous Steam Generation in Early Railway Locomotives, and in it he noted that particularly European locomotives seemed to all be fitted with these unusual contraptions, and many high-end American examples also, but only on the very expensive locomotives. Whereas in Europe it seemed to be a more standard technology. He concluded that these atmospheric condensers were responsible for increasing performance by 40 to 60%, reducing coal consumption by the same amount. And in another account, in the Russian Engineering Review 1883, in an article called Atmospheric Augmentation Systems on Early Imperial Locomotives, the same 40 to 60% gains were recorded using the same type of technology. From Wikipedia, my caps. Electromagnetic induction is the production of an electromotive force, EMF, or voltage across an electrical conductor due to a changing magnetic field. Discovered by Michael Faraday in 1831, it generates electric current when a conductor moves through a magnetic field, or is exposed to a varying magnetic flux. This fundamental principle is used in generators, transformers, and induction cooktops. So what was happening here was, as the video explains roughly halfway through, the guy making the video took an electronics expert with him to see the only surviving example of one of these atmospheric condensers still in existence, although unoperational. It's still on Locomotive 34 in a museum owned by Swiss Northern Railway in Switzerland in deep storage since 1987 for restoration. They left the atmospheric augmentation system in situ only because they didn't have a clue what it was for. The electronics expert said that this contraption is a huge resonator, which is about 3 in diameter and about the same in height, looking similar to a dome and made of copper, has a 2-point on the top going straight upwards, is clearly to harvest energy, in the same way that other Tartarian technology would. Thai temples look just like this, as all domed buildings do that fit the Romanesque or colonial style of planetary architecture seen in most countries, usually as government buildings, libraries, schools, etc. Inside this dome was carefully woven copper wire, pulled tightly in Fibonacci series patterns and golden ratio formations. The expert with him explained that this system would superheat the water inside the boiler by electrical induction, and explained that it would need to be traveling through pockets of increased electromagnetism to make it work. But he suggested that possibly at some places along the train track, electromagnetic energy would form in pockets, some larger, some smaller, and this would be necessary to make the system work. But he didn't know Christian 21 intel. The whole train track is following the electromagnetic crystalline lattice membrane network itself. That's why these trains' atmospheric augmentation systems actually worked, because they were working in an electromagnetic environment, the very same environment that the parasites were trying to dampen with the actual train track in the first place. Honestly, to have this revealed over egg on toast in a fatty calf in Portsmouth. Christian, bruv, you are next level, mate. How could he possibly have known that unless he's telling the truth? Or are we to assume he guessed that impossible and unknowable knowledge? Lull requirements of electromagnetic induction. A changing magnetic field is necessary, a static magnetic field, a stationary conductor, and a constant magnetic field will not induce current. Increasing induction. The induced voltage can be increased by using a stronger magnet, moving the conductor faster, or increasing the number of turns in the coil. Applications. Electric generators convert mechanical energy into electrical energy by rotating a coil in a magnetic field. Induction cooktops utilize rapidly changing magnetic fields to induce eddy currents that heat cookware directly. So the coal gets the locomotive moving forward on the train track. When traveling 20 MeV plus, the electromagnetic inductance heaters, powered by the domed resonator sitting on top of the boiler, kick in, and no more coal needs to be spent because the water is being superheated via electromagnetic inductance, with the velocity of the locomotive within the fluctuating electromagnetic fields that the locomotive is traveling through along the electromagnetic emanation paths, tracks of the lattice membrane network, ley lines. This all backs up Christian's info so well. We couldn't believe it when we were at Kev's and saw this video. In 2008, there was an estate auction in Pennsylvania. The auction was the estate of Edward Sterling, the former chief engineer of the Pennsylvania Railway between 1874 and 1902. He wrote a letter shortly before he died, explaining that only now, in his 83rd year, his reputation can no longer be damaged, his pension can't be affected either, and at the risk of sounding like a crazy old man, he explained that in 1887, the Consolidated Coal Company gave an order to have all the atmospheric condensers removed from the locomotives and taken off and smelted. They were not to be simply removed, they were to be removed and melted down to molten metal. This was to eradicate the technology used. They didn't want people buying less coal, they wanted people buying more coal, because they owned the coal fields. It's the same today, but with different products and essentials. It's not David and Goliath anymore. It's David and a bunch of sub-level NPC minions in all sectors who have smelt a rat at last. They just need to be made aware. At the sub-minion level, nurses, office staff, teachers, magistrates, their helpers and legal teams, council staff not managers, let the staff know. When I write these letters to authority now, I'm not writing them to hit the people at the top, because they are long ago removed. It's the people in jobs carrying on the old system still blissfully unaware that anything is about to happen. I'm drafting letters to email out to blanket bomb different sectors of government arms and its various tentacles such as schools, GPs, police stations, social services, etc., etc., etc. The idea is that Frontline sees the information on empty office space and FEMA camps. Push back, people? It's the only tie that would ever work. XXX Big Love Leon XXX.